House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute, but we'll suspend for a moment. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The gentleman from Utah is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor the 3 fallen firefighters who tragically died this past weekend while fighting fires in Utah. Emily Barker, Nick Hutcherson, and Sydney Watson died during an interagency response to the Knowles and Gore fire, which are among several fires burning in our state right now. I'm praying for their families and those close to the impacted areas. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. I'm grateful to the many first responders working tirelessly to protect us, brave men and women from across the state on the front lines fighting for our communities, and we can never adequately thank them for their service. In Utah and across the country, we are seeing devastating wildfires tear through forests and homes. Nearly 2,000 personnel are actively fighting these fires spanning over 250,000 acres. Too many deadly wildfires are due to unpreparedness and mismanagement of forests. And I was an original co-sponsor of the Fix Our Forests Act and was proud that it was one of the first bills that we passed in the House this Congress. The Fix Our Forests Act will increase coordination so wildfire agencies can better prepare for fire season and prevent these catastrophic wildfires. It's time that the Senate finish the job and send this bill to the President's desk. As this weekend has shown, Utah cannot wait any longer. I'm also working on new legislation to better prevent, detect, and mitigate wildfires. We need better coordination and more support for those putting their lives on the line to protect us. And this legislation is a step in the right direction. What's happening across my state is devastating, and I pray that the fires will soon be contained for the safety of our first responders. And with that, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition? The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and service of Orange County Commissioner James Etta Bedford, a devoted public servant whose leadership and compassion left an enduring mark on the community she loved. For more than 2 decades, Commissioner Bedford served Orange County with integrity and purpose. She believed people deserved better, and she worked tirelessly to strengthen public education, expand opportunity, and ensure every family had a voice in local government. She was a steadfast advocate for people with autism and developmental disabilities, helping families navigate complex systems and secure the support that they needed. I will remember James Etta as a trusted colleague and dear friend who led with kindness and never lost sight of the people she served. I offer my heartfelt condolences to her family, her loved ones, and the entire Orange County community. She will be deeply missed, but her example of selfless service will not be forgotten. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
My remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the United States of America's 250th anniversary. There's nothing that exemplifies freedom more than the stars and stripes of the American flag. Have you noticed that businesses, restaurants, and even homes in your neighborhood may have a flagpole with no United States flag flying on it? This 4th of July, let's change that. If there's a restaurant, business, or home in your area with a bare flagpole, encourage them to return Old Glory to its rightful place. And if you don't have a United States flag proudly displayed, this 4th of July is the perfect time for a family project to install one. Let's fly the American flag as we celebrate 250 years of freedom this 4th of July. May God bless the United States of America.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last week marked 4 years since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and ripped away the constitutional right women had relied on for nearly 50 years. In Texas, Republican politicians rushed to impose some of the most extreme abortion bans in the entire country. They promised that these laws would protect life. They told us that there would be no consequences. But now the consequences are here, and it's women that are paying for them with their lives. Since Dobbs and Texas's total abortion ban, infant deaths in Texas jumped from 1,985 to 2,240 in a single year. That's a 255 death increase. It should pain each of us that here in this country, a woman can walk into a hospital with a medical emergency, and doctors will have to stop and ask whether politicians will put them in prison if they save her life. If those pushing these abortion bans truly cared about life, they'd be fighting for affordable child care, for paid family leave, for better maternal health care. On this anniversary, I hope that we all stay committed to fighting so that every single woman in this country can get their freedom and their right to an abortion back in this country. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Very few people get to celebrate their 100th birthday. Even fewer can look back on those years knowing they helped defend the freedoms that continue to make this country an incredible place to call home. Earlier this month, my constituent Frank Horn turned 100 years old. Today, we celebrate not only his 100th birthday, but a century marked by sacrifice, bravery, service, and devotion to his country and community. Born in South Carolina in 1926, Frank later made Charlotte, North Carolina his lifelong home. He joined the United States Navy in May of 1945 as World War II was drawing to a close and began training to serve in naval aviation, answering the call with deep patriotism and love for his country. After his service, Frank attended UNC Chapel Hill and built a long career in manufacturing while continuing to serve his church, family, and community, becoming a husband, father, grandfather, and a friend to many. As America approaches its 250th birthday, Mr. Speaker, Frank's story is a powerful reminder of his character, service, and patriotism that has carried this nation from one generation to the next. Frank, we're proud to celebrate your 100th birthday and thank you for your incredible service to our nation. May God bless you, your family, and the United States of America. And with that, I yield back.
Yields back. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Arizona seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the extraordinary young woman from Yuma, Arizona, Kofa High School senior Sabrina Anaya. Sabrina distinguished herself both in the classroom and on the field, earning the title of Kofa High School valedictorian while being named Yuma's Female Athlete of the Year. A remarkable three-sport athlete, Sabrina excelled in cross country, soccer, and track and field. She was named the Yuma Sun Girls Cross Country Runner of the Year, earned Defensive Player of the Year in honors in soccer, and dominated distance events on track, winning the 800 meter, 1600 meter, and 3200 meter races. But what makes Sabrina's accomplishments so impressive is not just her athletic talent or academic excellence, it is her dedication, discipline, and determination to succeed in every area. She has shown what is possible through hard work, perseverance, and a commitment to excellence. Sabrina represents the very best of Yuma and Arizona. I congratulate her on this well-deserved recognition and wish her continued success at Arizona State University and in her studies in electrical engineering. Sabrina, felicidades. Congratulations. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from the great state of Kansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on the 1-year anniversary of the tragic murder of my intern, Eric Tarpinian Jackham. His family endured a devastating loss that no family should ever have to go through. Last summer, Eric was horrifically murdered in the nation's capital while he was shot when walking on the street. He was only 21 years old. My staff and I feel the loss of Eric every day. We remember the time we spent with him at the congressional baseball game last year when he remarked that he loved working on Capitol Hill. We remember when he sat in our front office and was always happy to greet visitors with a smile. We remember how he helped with the daily press briefings every single moment. Also, we mostly remember his dedication to serving others, which is why he came to Washington to intern in a congressional office. We will never forget Eric for the rest of our lives, and we will never forget the evil that took him from the world. The hearts of his family, his friends, my staff, my wife Susan, and I are still impacted by the loss of a bright young man whose life was tragically cut short by senseless violence. But Eric did not die in vain. Eric's murder was catalyst for criminal reform in Washington, D.C. Because of his death, President Trump brought in the National Guard to protect other innocent people like him, the millions of Americans who come to D.C. because of their love of country and public service. We can say that because of Eric, many people's lives were saved from the violence he fell victim to. Through this tragedy, we find comfort in knowing that Eric is now in the hands of Jesus Christ, our loving Savior. I pray God will continue to provide strength and peace with Eric's family and everyone who knew him on this sad anniversary. Mr. Speaker, I ask the House to observe a moment of silence to remember Eric Tarpinian Jackham. Mr. Speaker, with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a sense of overwhelming gratitude and admiration for my longtime district director, Ms. Anita Taylor, as she celebrates her retirement. For more than 2 decades, from my days as a member of the New York City Council to my tenure in the House of Representatives, Anita has stood by my side, devoted to the cause of selflessly serving the people of the 9th District of New York, the beloved community that we call home. As my district director, she has never failed to rise on behalf of those who need her aid or just her listening ear and wise counsel. Truly, Anita is a woman so dear to my heart, so essential to my team, and so beloved by the good people of Brooklyn. While I'm overjoyed to see her embrace her next chapter and all the beauty, peace, and rejuvenation it has to offer, I cannot help but feel a sense of melancholy on having to enter into this new chapter in my own career without her by my side. Thankfully, I know she's only a phone call away. From the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of Team Clark and the people of New York's 9th Congressional District, thank you, Anita. I wish you only the best, because the best is all you have ever delivered, and the best is what you deserve. Congratulations. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize my middle son, Barrett Carter, a proud Southeast Georgia native and accomplished PGA head golf professional. Barrett graduated from the University of Georgia before settling in the New Orleans area in 2009, where he has built an impressive career as a PGA Class A professional. He has served at some of the region's premier facilities, including TPC Louisiana and Metairie Country Club, head golf professional at Oak Knoll Country Club in Hammond, and just recently was appointed as head golf professional at Bayou Oaks at City Parks in New Orleans. Most notably, Barrett is passionate about growing the game through instruction and creating welcoming programs for golfers of all ages and abilities. Barrett and his wife, Hallie, live in Metairie with 3 precious daughters, Bennett, Catherine, and Clara, and they are proud to call South Louisiana home. Although Barrett has made Louisiana his home, the 1st District of Georgia is proud to claim him as one of our own. Congratulations, son. Your mother and I are very proud of you and love you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
We gather today to honor with a grateful heart a remarkable woman whose life was not measured merely by the years she lived, but by the lives she lifted. Ms. Khadija Muhammad Farrakhan reminds us that history is often shaped not only by those who stand behind the microphone, but also those who stand faithfully beside it. She was a devoted mother who nurtured character before success, a gracious teacher whose lessons were written as much by example as by instruction, and a faithful servant whose deepest desire was to honor Almighty God through a life of discipline, dignity, and love. She walked beside her husband of 72 years the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, not simply as a spouse, but as a trusted companion, counselor, and partner in purpose. She leaves us a testimony that greatness is not found in prominence alone, but in perseverance, not in position, but in purpose, not in acclaim, but in unwavering faithfulness. May we honor her memory by living the virtues she embodied: faith that never faltered, love that never failed, service that never ceased, and hope that never surrendered. Well done, good and faithful servant. May God grant her eternal peace, comfort her and her beloved family, and continue to let the light of her life shine through generations yet to come. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for one minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of Michael A. Caricarte, an American of Cuban descent, decorated Army combat veteran, a proud Christopher Columbus explorer, and one of South Florida's most generous philanthropists. Arriving in Miami from Cuba in 1948, Mr. Caricarte lived the American dream. He proudly served as a colonel in the United States Army and a Green Beret before building one of the leading healthcare and insurance organizations serving Latin America and the Caribbean. Mr. Caricarte devoted his life to his family and helping others, supporting hospitals, schools, churches, orphanages, and organizations. He mentored young people, assisted students in need, and opened doors for countless others, never seeking recognition. Mr. Caricarte believed that every blessing carried with it a responsibility to serve. He lived that principle every day through humility, leadership, and faith. I extend my deepest condolences to his children, grandchildren, and family. South Florida has lost a true giant, but his legacy of service, generosity, and love for others will endure for generations. May God bless the memory of Mike Caricarte, and may he rest in peace. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Mexico seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Today, I rise to honor Albuquerque legend Mr. Ernie C. DeBaca and to congratulate him on his retirement. For 9 years, Ernie has served as the president and CEO of the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce, one of the largest in the country. But his service began long before then, serving as the chair of the board since 2006. From his work with the International Trade Committee, which helped put Albuquerque's economy on the global map, to helping the Bean Coffee Shop open inside the Chamber's own building, Ernie is the type of leader who gets things done. And most importantly, he does so with kindness, energy, and integrity. Ernie's employees, colleagues, and mentees all say the same thing. He is the definition of a servant leader, and the ripple effect of his work has touched countless lives and small businesses for the better. Ernie, I hope the next chapter brings plenty of time spent in the loving company of your wife, Jerry, and your sons and grandchildren, and if you're lucky, maybe a bit more time to watch the final match of the World Cup. Thank you, Ernie, for your tireless service to New Mexico, and congratulations on your well-earned retirement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the late former Kendallville mayor and friend, Suzanne Hanshew. Mayor Hanshew serves as an example for all of us to follow for her dedication to her community and her country. Her military career is beyond admirable, as she served 24 years as a U.S. Marine and was inducted into the Indiana Military Veterans Hall of Fame. After retiring from the military, her service to her community did not stop. In 2004, Mayor Hanshew became Kendallville's first woman mayor and worked every day to improve the town of Kendallville for its residents. She had an unstoppable determination to push Kendallville forward and tackled every issue with energy and enthusiasm. Sadly, she passed away this week after losing a battle with cancer at the age of 66. She will truly be missed by all of us, but her legacy of service, kindness, and dedication to others will not be forgotten. My thoughts and prayers go out to her family, Randy, and her community, and we will miss her dearly. May she rest in peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the son of Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a son of North Texas who's an innovator, a leader, and one of the most remarkable citizens that the city knows, and his name is Warren Parada. I didn't meet Warren in a boardroom. He was someone that reached out to my office, like many people do on casework, because he had an uncle who's a Vietnam vet that was having issues with his casework. And his claim is still under review today, as too many veterans are. But here's what really set Warren apart. He really turned his family frustrations into a solution. And his question was not, how do I do this? It was, what if I could make this easier for someone? And that's what Warren has tried to do with his BVR radar tool that helps scan claims and identifies missing information and compares them against Board of Veterans Appeals rulings. Something that could help veterans that are really out there struggling. And for 3 years now, Warren has been battling cancer, and he wrote this code in between rounds of chemotherapy and surgery, really leaning on his faith. And so I want to congratulate Warren for everything that he is doing to help veterans like his uncle as he is fighting terminal cancer that his doctor informed him that he had. Warren, thank you for all of your service to the community. Dallas thanks you for that. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
I'd like to ask unanimous consent to speak for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
I suppose what I should lead off for is asking for a half a minute or so of silence as we consider what I think is the most damaging Supreme Court decision in my time. But instead of going that way, I would like to address those few people in my district who've come up to me and have been surprisingly anti-Israel. One thing I want to point out, the similarity between Israel and the United States, it's not talked about enough, is we have people from all around the globe trying to get in both countries. I want to point out one way Israel is similar is that they are taking people from Philippines, India, Sri Lanka, Malawi, Ecuador, Kenya, China into their country to work because it's such a wonderful place. And just like Israel is a wonderful place, just like the United States, both of us have to put up with left-wing crazy people attacking us for being racist. So I'd like to thank Israel for taking people from all around the world who know they'd be better off there than in their home country. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in honor of the generations of Rhode Islanders who have come together for the longest continuously running 4th of July celebration in Bristol, Rhode Island. Since 1785, when the Reverend Henry Wright, a Revolutionary War veteran and minister of the First Congregational Church, hosted Bristol's first patriotic exercises, Rhode Islanders have gathered to celebrate our values of liberty, community, freedom, and prosperity. For 241 years, Rhode Islanders from all walks of life and visitors from all over the world have come together to walk along the famous red, white, and blue center lines snaking down the middle of the parade route. By the time the town welcomes as many as 200,000 visitors to its community, the town committee, the police department, the fire department, and the 4th of July committee have worked around the clock for months to pull off a safe and spectacular event. So as the crowds and the music swell this weekend, thank you to all who have made this event possible, and happy 4th of July. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from California, Mr. Takano, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to submit extraneous material into the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the conclusion of Pride Month. Pride is and always has been a protest. From the Stonewall uprisings to the neighborhood parades, Pride is about both standing up for equality and celebrating our authentic selves. When we celebrate Pride, we make a demand. We demand the right to live and to love openly. We demand to be treated equally and fairly under the law. We demand dignity. But first and foremost, we demand equality. This Congress, under Republican control, the House of Representatives, has taken more than 20 votes to attack the rights of LGBTQI+ Americans, and particularly the rights of transgender Americans. But even after all those votes, not one major anti-LGBTQI+ piece of legislation has become law. Members of the Congressional Equality Caucus have fought hard to fight back against all these attacks. Thanks to our work, we were able to remove every new anti-LGBTQI+ rider from the government funding bills for fiscal year 2026. House Republicans tried to add dozens of these new riders, and we were able to defeat every one. And we plan to do it again for fiscal year 2027. But the Trump administration's relentlessness has still had countless terrible impacts on our community. Under Donald Trump, transgender Americans' access to health care is under direct attack. The arms of the federal government tasked with enforcing America's rights, like the EEOC, are being sabotaged and forced to target the rights of every Americans to target the rights of the very Americans that they are meant to protect. Transgender service members are being carelessly kicked out of the military without regard for their merits and accomplishments or the military's operational security. Critical funding and research to combat the HIV and AIDS epidemics are being recklessly cut, and so much more. To the LGBTQI+ people watching right now, know that we are still fighting for you. And as chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus, I want to assure the American people, my colleagues and I are fighting back against these attacks at every turn in Congress. We are conducting oversight of Trump administration officials and demanding accountability from those who violate LGBTQI+ Americans' rights. Now, as we close out Pride Month, I stand with our allies across the country in reminding LGBTQI+ people, we are fighting for you, and we will not give up until every person is fully free to be themselves without fear of discrimination, harassment, or violence, and I wish all of you a happy Pride. Now, I'd like to yield to my colleague from the state of Washington and co-chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus, Ms. Emily Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Chair Takano. I rise today to celebrate Pride Month, ending today for most of the country, but still ongoing in our great state of Washington, where we just can't get enough. I'm also rising today to honor the resolution that I introduced alongside Representative Green, a longtime champion for LGBTQ equality. LGBTQ people have been dutifully serving in our military for decades. We are your neighbors, we are your elected officials, your teachers, your mentors, and friends. And despite Republicans' unrelenting attempts to erase queer and trans people from our history books, from our public spaces, and from our military, LGBTQ Americans are standing strong in our truth. And that's the beauty of Pride Month and why I'm so proud to introduce this resolution today, to honor the many contributions of LGBTQ Americans to our country, contributions which are outlined in this resolution so that no matter what attacks come in our government websites and in agencies across the executive branch, we will still have the story of so many brave LGBTQ leaders. Who knows when the majority party will be organized enough to move the NDAA through the House, but we know when it does come, it will come with several anti-LGBTQ amendments that have absolutely no business being attached to the overall package. My Republican colleagues talk a lot about protecting our freedoms, and yet spend so much time trying to strip freedoms away from LGBTQ Americans. The freedom to access health care by stripping TRICARE coverage from medically necessary life-saving care for trans peoples, and even taking away mental health coverage for kids. The freedom to serve our country by moving to codify Trump's ban on trans service members. There are thousands of trans people who are willing to die to protect our country, but Trump, Vance, Hegseth, and House Republicans want to ban them from serving. Or even the freedom for kids to participate in sports without being subjective to invasive and traumatizing exams to determine their gender before they can put on a jersey. I'd like to see some of my colleagues experience what a transvaginal ultrasound feels like, but for a kid who is a survivor of sexual assault or trauma, or even one who is not, it is incredibly painful and traumatizing. These actions are all part of a larger pattern we're seeing at the state level, across the country, by this administration, by House and Senate GOP leadership, and even by our activist Supreme Court to attack and villainize LGBTQ Americans. I want to be clear. The NDAA amendments do absolutely nothing to strengthen our military readiness or improve the lives of everyday Americans. Like everyone else, LGBTQ people want to afford childcare and housing and have access to health care and be able to contribute to an economy that works for all of us. And I look forward to a day where members of Congress drop this bizarre and personal vendetta against queer and trans people and get back to working on real issues to lower costs, to ensure we all have health care and housing and childcare, and to make America the country we know it can be. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman Emily Randall. I now want to yield to my colleague from the state of Florida and a vice chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding, and as we close out Pride Month, I am proud to join my Equality Caucus colleagues this evening in standing up for the LGBTQ+ community and recognizing their invaluable contributions to our nation. My South Florida district is home to one of the most diverse and vibrant LGBTQ+ communities in the entire country. And it is a privilege to fight for them every single day here in Washington and push back against the heinous smear campaign driven by extremist right-wing culture warriors. Unfortunately, Florida is a national staging ground to roll back the rights and dignity of the LGBTQ+ community. From the repulsive Don't Say Gay law to some of the more vicious trans attacks, Florida is ground zero for hate. And it hasn't stopped. Earlier this year, funding for the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, or ADAP, which assists low-income Floridians living with HIV and AIDS to afford their medications and insurance premiums, was slashed. Over 12,000 Floridians braced themselves to be kicked off of this life-saving program. But I proudly led all of my Florida Democratic colleagues in demanding the governor and the Department of Health and Human Services reverse these changes, and many organizations and leaders rallied to restore this vital funding as well. Thankfully, it brought some relief. The federal government established a temporary special enrollment period for Florida ADAP patients to switch health plans. And last month, Florida lawmakers averted these disastrous ADAP cuts in its fiscal year 2027 budget. But let me be clear. This was an entirely preventable crisis created by Governor DeSantis to harm Florida's LGBTQ+ community. It's an utter disgrace, and I will always call it out. I'm proud to be a founding member and vice chair of the Equality Caucus and an original co-sponsor of the Equality Act to expand the Civil Rights Act to ban discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity, because these attacks are relentless. As a senior House appropriator, I'll always lead the charge against hateful anti-LGBTQ+ policies and riders that peddle hate and do nothing to make life more affordable for Americans. And as ranking member of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Subcommittee, I was able to end the ban on pride flags from flying at VA facilities. Several weeks ago, Republicans advanced a partisan labor-H funding bill out of the House Appropriations Committee that decimates domestic HIV and AIDS research and prevention programs across the federal government. It even eliminates funding for the Ending the HIV Epidemic initiative championed by President Trump himself in his first term. This callous indifference shown by my Republican colleagues is astonishing, and that's why we must relentlessly fight the never-ending hate, because it has no place in this country. Thanks to brave freedom fighters, LGBTQ+ rights have come a long way. It was only 11 years ago that the Supreme Court upheld the constitutional right to marriage equality for same-sex couples. Yet now, almost a decade later, insidious and hateful forces try to chip away at this and other landmark gains made by gay, lesbian, and transgender individuals. But we won't let them take us back. Instead, we'll recommit ourselves to building a future in a country that is welcoming, inclusive, and treats everyone, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, with the respect that they rightfully deserve. Thank you to our chairman, and I yield back to Mr. Takano.
We thank, I do thank the Congresswoman from Florida for her wonderful remarks. I now yield to my colleague from the state of Wisconsin, Congresswoman Gwen Moore.
Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today on the last day of Pride Month as more than an LGBTQI ally. I am an accomplice. I am an enabler because I want to enable people to be cradled by the e pluribus unum, to be embraced by our American values of freedom and liberty and equality. I want to advocate for people to bring their authentic selves to our round table of a more perfect union. And you know, I want people to stand in the glow of our enlightenment after 250 years of this nation being a democracy. You know, despite the sadistic efforts that have been made in this Congress to diminish and limit LGBTQI people, every single appropriation bill riddled with insults and humiliation, none of them have come to fruition. None of them have become law. And why is that? That is because this is America, y'all. It is because we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It is a standard that we have lived by throughout this constitutional democracy. And let me tell you, after everything we've been through, the flag still stands. And I yield back to you, sir.
Thank you, Congresswoman Gwen Moore. Thank you. Happy Pride to you. I now yield to my colleague from the state of New York, Mr. Paul Tonko.
Thank you, Representative Takano, for yielding and for bringing us together this special order hour. This Pride Month, we are at a pivotal moment, a moment that demands our attention, our outrage, and yes, our action. Across the country, we are witnessing a barrage of dangerous policies, executive actions, hateful legislation, and vile rhetoric, all designed to strip away rights, sow fear, and erase hard-fought progress. This administration and its supporters have continued a calculated and relentless strategy to erase, to stigmatize, and to endanger LGBTQ+ people, especially trans youth. Today, the Supreme Court issued an incredibly disappointing ruling upholding discriminatory anti-transgender sports bans in West Virginia and Idaho. This decision is dehumanizing and has nothing to do with fairness or safety in sports. Trans kids deserve to have access to the same opportunities as their peers. Trans kids deserve to feel like they belong. And when recognition of existence is pulled back, when people cannot love freely, when histories are erased, our country is worse off. Kids trying to live safely and authentically are not a threat. Transgender service members deserve to serve openly. Families seeking care and support are not political pawns. And the providers committed to do no harm are not extremists. I stand with the LGBTQ plus community in my district and across our great nation. I will fight any actions that limit their right to live safely, freely, and fully as oneself. Pride is more than a celebration. It is a declaration of resilience, and a reminder of the power of community. Pride reminds us that joy itself is an act of resistance. Pride is about visibility. It's about solidarity and, yes, the unapologetic truth that LGBTQ plus people belong everywhere, always. This Pride Month and every day onward, we must recommit to standing against these attacks and ensuring that freedom, justice, and equal opportunity are guaranteed to all people under the law. With that, I thank you and yield back to Representative Takano. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Congressman Tonko. Happy Pride to you.
Thank you.
I now want to recognize my colleague from the state of New Mexico, the land of enchantment, Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy Pride, everyone. Today we rise to celebrate Pride Month and the LGBTQ plus communities all across New Mexico and the country. To every member of the LGBTQ plus community, you are seen, you are loved, and you make this world brighter. And we celebrate you not just in June, but all year round, because Pride is every day. Now, we know it is difficult times. From the relentless attacks on the LGBTQ plus and especially trans communities, from the Trump administration's attacks on our military, veterans, and history itself, to the GOP's relentless and callous attacks on this floor, to the Supreme Court's undermining of the basic civil rights of the LGBTQ plus community, our communities are living in fear, uncertain of what comes next. And many have seen this story before. Parents who are scared for their children, elders who lived through the AIDS epidemic, and so many who grew up in places and spaces where their lives were criminalized, where they lived in danger, and where they could not live as their full and authentic selves. In fact, we almost lost an entire generation because of anti-LGBTQ plus policies in the 1980s, and we want to be clear that we are not going back. We are here to stand with the community and fight for you every single day, whether that's at the local, the national, or the state level. And we want you to know that in the Equality Caucus, we've got your back, and we want you to be able to continue to live your life out loud as your authentic selves. We're going to continue to push for legislation to protect you regardless of where you live. We're going to continue to fight to pass the Equality Act, and we know that this is a matter of life or death for so many out there. But we also know that we cannot do it alone. What we need is for all of you to continue to show up, to speak out, and to live your lives unapologetically. Continue to celebrate, continue to live openly, love openly, build community, and imagine that future. Because creating queer spaces and queer joy is an act of resistance. And you just being here on this planet and being your bad self is also an act of resistance. So please, continue to show up. Know that your life, your existence matters, your light matters, and your fight matters. So we are here to celebrate you and to wish you happy Pride. I yield back.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Stansbury, and happy Pride to you and the people of Mexico. I now yield to my colleague from the state of Missouri, the Show Me State, and I yield to my good friend, Mr. Congressman Wesley Bell.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in solidarity with the LGBTQ community as we close out a truly special month of celebration and joy. This past weekend, I had an amazing time walking in the St. Louis Pride Parade. It was hot outside, but the energy and the feeling of community was palpable. And to me, that is what this administration fails to see, a community rooted in love, understanding, and acceptance. And instead of supporting our fellow LGBTQ Americans, this administration has chosen to turn them into targets of hate, targets of bigotry, targets of cruel and deliberate policies to erase them and their history. But I have a promise for my LGBTQ friends and family. We will always stand with you. We will always stand for you. I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Bell, and happy Pride to you and the people of Missouri. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to thank a group of people who have been on the front lines of the fight for LGBTQI+ equality. The litigators who are challenging this administration's anti-LGBTQI+ policies and more broadly fighting to protect our rights, the rights of all Americans. Over the past year and a half, these litigators have filed dozens of lawsuits to both protect LGBTQI+ rights and block the Trump administration's anti-equality efforts. When President Trump reinstituted the trans military ban, litigators jumped into action and fought for our nation's transgender service members. When the Department of Health and Human Services wiped critical public health data from federal websites for simply mentioning LGBTQI+ people, a lawsuit forced the department to restore these web pages. As the administration has targeted trans people's access to medically necessary care, litigators have filed lawsuit after lawsuit responding to each attack. Litigators are standing up for our community from local district courts to the Supreme Court. Pride is a protest, and there are few forms of protest that are more powerful or with more direct impact than challenging discriminatory policies in court. Many of these organizations leading these efforts are operating with less resources than the last Trump administration, yet dealing with an even higher volume of attacks. Behind every complaint filed and every win are teams of litigators and support staff working countless hours to defend our rights. And I must say, when I say our rights, I mean our rights as Americans, because LGBTQI+ rights are American rights. And as I stand before this body, I want to extend my gratitude and the gratitude of the entire Congressional Equality Caucus to the teams of litigators who are fighting so hard to defend our community in courts across this nation, and to all of you, all of those litigators and their support staffs, I say to you on this final day of Pride Month, happy Pride. Thank you for your great work. And now I want to yield time to my friend and colleague from the great state of Arizona, Adelita Grijalva.
Thank you to my friend, Congressman Takano, for hosting this Pride Month special order hour. For generations, LGBTQ+ people have been at the forefront of a fight for a more just, inclusive future. This month, we honor the resilience, courage, and determination of a community that has never stopped organizing, speaking out, and demanding equality. As a proud ally and a mom, I know that the fight for LGBTQ+ rights is connected to so many of the challenges we face today, from reproductive freedom to healthcare access, to housing, education, and the right to live openly and authentically. Pride reminds us that progress doesn't come from the top down. It isn't handed to us by billionaires or corporations. It is won when ordinary people come together, build coalitions together, and refuse to accept injustice. And that work is not over. Just this morning, on the last day of Pride, the Supreme Court ruled to allow states to ban trans kids from playing in school sports. Really? I think they're worried about the wrong 1% in this country. To the queer youth and trans kids and their families across the nation, I know these are scary times, but you are not alone. As Republicans continue to scapegoat queer people, especially transgender youth and their families, we must meet this moment with courage. We've got to organize, speak truth to power, and keep building a movement rooted in justice and equity. Let us never forget that pride is a protest, but it is also our power. And together, we will keep fighting for a future where everyone can live with dignity and freedom. Happy Pride. I yield back to Representative Takano.
Thank you, Representative Adelita Grijalva, and happy Pride to you and all the people of your great state of Arizona. Now, Mr. Speaker, I rise to send a message directly to the transgender community in America. And here's what I have to say. You are not alone. I know it is easy to feel like there's no one left in Washington willing to stand up for you, but that is not true. Every day, my colleagues and I in the Congressional Equality Caucus, which is over 190 strong, we are fighting for you. I know it is hard right now, but you are not alone. Even with all the anti-trans attacks coming from this chamber, my colleagues in the Equality Caucus and I have been successful in blocking the worst of the worst from becoming law. We successfully blocked every anti-transgender rider in the fiscal year 2026 government funding bills from becoming law. Not a single bill exclusively focused on attacking our rights has made it to the President's desk in this Congress. We're still fighting for a brighter tomorrow, and I hope you are too. And with that, let me just say, it has been my profound honor to celebrate the LGBTQI plus community and honor the conclusion of Pride Month with my colleagues here tonight. Pride began as a protest, as a demand for equal dignity, equal treatment, and equal justice for LGBTQI plus people. As we continue our fight for the rights of LGBTQI plus people here and in the halls of Congress, that spirit is what drives us. To every American watching tonight, I want you to know that we will never give up. We will never stop fighting for equality. And to you all, to every American across this country, from Maine to Hawaii to the territories, I say, happy Pride, happy Pride. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Presley, is recognized for the remainder of the hour as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you. In 1852, Frederick Douglass, an abolitionist, orator, and formerly enslaved man, delivered one of America's most famous speeches. What to the slave is the 4th of July? He addressed a nation celebrating freedom while denying it to millions. With moral clarity and urgency, he exposed the stark contradiction between America's founding ideals and the lived reality of Black people, calling out a democracy that had excluded those it claimed to liberate. As our nation celebrates its 250-year anniversary, that tension still resonates. Black Americans continue to confront systemic inequities that have been legislated and codified. Douglass's words endure as both a mirror and a mandate, revealing uncomfortable truths while urging us to fight for an America as good as its promise. Before I begin, I want to recognize and thank Mass Humanities for sustaining this vital tradition through public readings of Douglass's speech across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, ensuring that its message continues to educate, challenge, and to inspire new generations. And now, I invite you to listen and to consider these words, not as distant history, but as a call to action today. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, the task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. The papers and placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. This certainly sounds large and out of the common way, for it is true that I have often had the privilege to speak in this beautiful hall and to address many who now honor me with their presence. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here today is to me a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude. This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This, to you, is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of your great deliverance. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. You are even now only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon. Fellow citizens, the simple story is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, was not then born. You were under the British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government, England as the fatherland, although a considerable distance from your home, imposed in the exercise of its parental prerogatives upon its colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as in its mature judgment it deemed wise, right, and proper. But your fathers, who had not adopted the idea of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and the justice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and altogether such as ought not to be quietly submitted to. I scarcely need say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of those measures fully accords with that of your fathers. Feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government, your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn. Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victims of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of the colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we at the distance of time regard it. The timid and the prudent of that day were, of course, shocked and alarmed by it. Their opposition to the then dangerous thought was earnest and powerful, but amid all their terror and affrighted vociferations against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on, and the country with it. On the 2nd of July, 1776, the old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshipers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. We seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day whose transparency is at all equal it. Resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British crown. Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you therefore may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny. My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and His cause is the ever-living now. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. Now is the time. The important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers unless your children are to be blessed by your labors. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. My subject, then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day from the slave's point of view. Standing here, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future. Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice or who is not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just. I fancy I hear one of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother, abolitionists, fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia which, if committed by any black man, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being? Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle on your hills, when the fish of the sea and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then will I argue with you that the slave is a man. For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. It is not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men. Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty? That he is the rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. And must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation as a matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans to show that men have a natural right to freedom? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employments for my time and strength than such arguments would imply. What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine? That God did not establish it? That our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There's blasphemy in the thought. That which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? I cannot. The time for such an argument is past. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and I could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty and unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impotence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. you declare before the world and are understood by the world to declare that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet, you hold securely in a bondage which, according to your own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than ages of that which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose. A seventh part of the inhabitants of your country. Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing and byword to a mocking earth. Be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from you at this hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 millions crush and destroy it forever. Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. I, therefore, leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions. My spirit is cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself up from the surrounding world and trot round in the same old path of its fathers without interference. The time was when such could be done, but a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and empires have become unfashionable. The arm of commerce has borne away the gates of the strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. Wind, steam, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. In the fervent aspirations of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in saying it, all God speed the day when human blood shall cease to flow, and every clime be understood, the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil good, not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change into a faithful friend, each foe.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. This is going to be another presentation of basically budget, debt, my frustration with this place, my frustration with telling the truth. Look, we're a remarkable country. No matter what you hear often from our brothers and sisters, particularly from the left, a quarter millennia of a remarkable experiment. We have brought more freedom to the world, more prosperity to the world
more ingenuity to the world, more health to the world. And I think sometimes our dourness, our, if that's a word, our frustration, and heaven knows I'm a sinner on this. I'm terrified of our unwillingness to tell the truth about basic math. So we're going to walk behind these mics over and over and over and over and desperately try to find whatever the dopamine hit is of the day. And yet we'll borrow another $6-7 billion today. Last week when I did this, I had my little boy who had just turned 4 years old that day running behind us. It was so much fun. And yet the comments we received from the folks who are unique enough to watch something like this commented on the little boy, not necessarily the math. And I was trying to make the point at one moment saying, here's my 4-year-old we've adopted. It's the greatest gift God has ever given someone. And he's healthy. We were terrified he would never be healthy. He was born with rather severe drugs. That little boy, this government has made a decision. We will need 104% of his lifetime earnings just to pay the federal government pensions, to cover Social Security, Medicare, military retirement, our retirement. 104% of the generation of young people today, we are so upside down mathematically. I also tried, and I'm going to do it again because apparently I didn't do it very well. We passed a housing bill. I voted no because there were too many gimmicks and it made government too big. Fine. Personal opinion, I actually have a background in housing economics. But not once did someone come behind these microphones and say, one of the primary problems in affordability of you being able to purchase a home is the fact that if we had a normal debt load, you'd be paying 5.5% on today's 30-year loan. Instead, you're paying 6.5%. Why? Because the United States is going to borrow probably $2.3 trillion this year. We're crowding you out. We're raising the price of money. I've given presentation after presentation saying if we keep this up for much longer, the bond market is going to run this country. We will exist in a fear of the weekly, monthly debt auctions. So we actually brought some data just trying to show the difference between 2011 and right now, the interest rate movement. This is interest rates. You're paying a point higher because of the scale of U.S. sovereign debt borrowing. That when you buy that 30-year mortgage on an average priced home, and I think we used an average priced home in Arizona, not here in D.C., you're going to pay about $2,500 more. And over the life of that loan, $76,000 more. And that's just the cost of money because we, as a government, borrowed so much. We are responsible for that higher expense in your interest rates. Except for the problem here is the hallways here are full of armies of people coming into our offices demanding more money. So what happens when, Mr. Speaker, you and I go home? We tell the truth. Now, we make people angry because I'm starting to worry, do you want us to lie to you? Is that actually what you're asking for? Do you want us to tell you things that set off a good dopamine hit, that make you feel this, but don't tell you the truth about the demographics, debt, and deficits? Because at that point, it's not a conversation of what else we can give you. It's going to be a conversation of how we're going to fix it. But the data is actually pretty darn clear. Our borrowing raises your car loan, raises the cost of you financing your small business. And heaven knows it's going to cost you on an average home in Tempe, Phoenix, not Scottsdale, about $76,000 more in interest. That is a knockoff effect. So let's actually start, and I'm going to produce a whole bunch of boards here. And my rule used to be, I'm going to give you the problem, and then I'm going to give you a series of solutions. I'm tired of coming here with solutions and then realizing there's no chance in hell I can even get co-sponsors, because it would mean telling the truth. When I've come here and shown the MedPAC reports, and there's $1 trillion, $2 trillion of misalignment, because some of it's legal on the edge. We introduced a bill, preliminary score was $1.84 trillion of savings over 10 years, just to fix some of the things in Medicare Advantage that wouldn't cut a single service. And I got told this morning in conference, David, you don't understand. It has the word Medicare. We're not allowed to talk about that in an election year, but we'll fix it next year. I've been here 16 years and it's always next year. So let's take a look at this chart. And I often start with this one because so few people understand. You see the blue area? That's all you as a member of Congress get to vote on. Unless it's a reconciliation budget, except we now use reconciliation budgets to pass things, not save money. And here's your math problem. As of today, just this little net interest sliver for this fiscal year will be 20% of all tax receipts. So when you pay $1, 20 cents of that is just covering interest. I'm going to show you some charts here that in 9 years, how big that math actually gets. But understand, your government is functionally an insurance company with an army. I love that line. Think about it, it'll make sense. Non-defense and defense, that's all we vote on. And we're about to make this much bigger. People go to war with us when we're trying to cut down non-defense. And look, a moment of truth. Let's have some fun here. Doge identified, a $250 billion in potential savings modeling. What has made it through the legislative process is about $7 billion. Basically, what we will borrow today. And to help folks who aren't really good at math with lots of zeros, your government, we borrow about $1 million every 13 seconds or so. 13 and a half seconds, we borrow $1 million. And then $1 million. So often we'll have debates here, this saves $3 million. And you try to explain, you barely covered 30 some seconds of borrowing. We're now borrowing about 90, if you do just this fiscal year so far, so just this fiscal year, about $73,000 a second. If you do the last 12 months, now understand there's a blip in there because we had the extraordinary measures where we didn't have a debt ceiling, we had to refund it. But if you do the last 12 months, we're borrowing about $98,000 a second. But I know everyone's going to talk about that, right? So, all right, let's get to let's do some speed dating on math. Do you see this chart? This is basically to make a point. We are in the OECD, basically the Organization of Developed Economies. Do you notice the red one down here? If you add up everything, we're borrowing 7.9% of our entire economy. We are the worst in the entire industrialized world. And you actually start to take a look, when you start seeing countries like Greece and those much healthier than we are. Do you realize today Greece can sell a 10-year bond substantially cheaper than the United States? Of course, we're going to work on that and talk about it next year. So let's actually walk through some what's going on. And remember, and I'm going to try to make this point a couple times through the presentation and some of the last slides, the primary driver of the debt is not a tax cut over here, it's our demographics. Next year, the data looks like we're going to have fewer under 18 than we had 20 years ago and double the number of 65 and up. But are we allowed to actually say that? It's not personal. It's not actually even Democrat or Republican. It's just math. Look, I'm blessed to hold the chairmanship of the Joint Economic Committee. So I have a handful of guys who all have PhDs, and we geek out on this, and we're trying to find ways, and they're terrified with me. I've done presentation after presentation here of my chairmanship from Ways and Means over oversight, where the fraud we found in so many programs. Can I get a piece of legislation? Can we actually have an honest discussion of fixing it? Well, we'd have to take on the lobbyists. We'd actually have to tell the truth. We'd actually have to redesign the programs. We'd actually have to have an honest conversation of some of the fraud we found in things like Medicaid and Medicare. And even then, understand, we've worked on this over and over and over. It's still 7 to 12% of the spending we can figure out is missed payments, fraud, and the majority of it isn't some international syndicate coming and stealing money from us. It's things we, as members of Congress, have allowed to happen. Because when we find it, we don't go back and fix the law, because that would be hard, because we'll have to take on advertising. They'll say mean things about us. So, all right. Raising spending, not falling revenues, have driven long-term deficits. Here's a point. Revenues. Go back to 2015, all the way through what we've modeled. You'll notice it's consistent. It's basically the long-term projection sits about 18.8% of the entire economy we're collecting. Back down here was slightly below, it's 17.8, 17.9. It's not tax cuts, it's demographics. And here's the problem. Our spending, when we get 30 years from now, almost 28% of the entire economy. But I need to make a point. When you actually look at some of these charts, you're going to actually see, and I'm bouncing around, if we do current policy. Let me explain for those who are not budget geeks. Here's the law. In our laws, we have taxes are going to go back up in 4 years. Oh, that program is going to get cut in 4 years. We used to have this thing called pay-go, pay as you go, except in the law, there was this scam. It says, well, if it goes beyond 5 years, we have to find offsets to pay for it. But if you write the law that it ends in 5 years, even though they never end in 5 years because we'll always extend it, then you don't have to score it. You don't have to score it as more long-term debt. We lie in our budget documents. Here's the current law. So last summer, we had a whole fight. 1 year ago, we had a fight about this. Do you use current law or current policy? Even though this current law had all these things ending. So we couldn't win that. So we used current policy, which actually gave it extending of the current spending. Now when you start to take a look, you start realizing revenues basically stay the same, but now you're borrowing about spending 32% of the entire economy. And then you take another look at it, budget deficits under current policy will exceed 14% of the entire GDP. So that's in 30 years. How many of you plan to be around in 30 years? If you plan to be around in 30 years, think about this. Treasury tomorrow wants to sell a 30-year bond. There's still a remarkably liquid market buying our bonds. When will the folks buying that 30-year bond start to realize, I got a problem? 30 years from now, if we stay with the current both law and our policy baseline, You have about 14% of the country's GDP just in borrowing, not spending, not in building things, just paying interest. So, all right, let's get back on track here. This is one of the things I've railed about over and over and over and over because I get frustrated with it. CBO keeps having to readjust its baseline. Why does it have to readjust its baseline? Okay, things happen. COVID happens, a war happens, 2008 happens, and Congress happens. But understand, if you and I take a look at what were our projections, we functionally have added about just each year, and I think this, what does this all add up to? 1.39 trillion in additional spending in the baseline. It's geeky, but what it means is when CBO puts out a report, it is of what they have, but they're constantly having to update it because things happen in the economy, interest rates go up, and we spend money and don't pay for it. So, let's actually walk through another famous chart. Ever since the pandemic legislation, so during the pandemic, we were spending about $63,000 per American citizen. Guess what? Today, that's way down. We're spending about $55,000 per American citizen. But over the next 9 years, it goes up to $66,000. So if you add up all the spending, add up all the residents of the United States, citizens, $66,000 is our spend. Right now it's $55,000. Anyone see a math problem? If you don't see the math problem, I'm going to bite my tongue. Budget deficits under current law will reach $3.1 trillion by 2036. So that's 9 budget years from now, right? You know, because we're working on right now, well, we hopefully are finishing passing the 2027 stuff. This is under current law. I need you to understand how devastatingly ugly this number is. And when I show you under current policy, it's even worse. So this is 9 budget years from now. CBO last February said, hey, we're going to be borrowing $3.1 trillion that year. 2.1 of it will be just interest. So the structural deficit will be only $1 trillion. But on top of that, we owe $2.1 trillion in interest. Okay. But what does that actually mean to us if we this is under current law, that means in 9 budget years, 31% of every tax dollar that's paid, this is income tax, this is payroll taxes, this is tariffs, this is everything coming in. In 9 budget years, 31% of all those tax collections will be just interest. And this is on current law, assuming no wars, no pandemics, no market crashes, no additional spending from Congress. And if you come back over here, my math says 20%, the chart says 19%. Depending where revenues are, it could be 21. That's this year. So let's just use 20%. This year, when you write $100, $20 of that just went to pay interest. Anyone see a problem? So let's see. Budget deficits under current policy will reach $4.4 trillion. Okay, you see what I'm doing here? This one said the deficit, and I'm sorry, this is a little awkward, in 9 budget years is $100 billion under current law. But if we keep doing what we've been doing, which is we just extend current policy, And I'm sorry, this is geeky, but it's math, but this is going to destroy the republic. We've made it a quarter millennia. I'd really like it. I'd like this to be another American century. I'd like it to be the place my 10-year-old, my now 4-year-old, prosper. Hell, I'd like to have a nice, quiet retirement. But in 9 budget years, it's no longer $3.1 trillion of borrowing. It's 4.4 if we follow current spending policy, current baseline spending, not current baseline law. Anyone see a problem? Mr. Speaker, are we even allowed to talk about this? Because I know the armies of folks, both often at home, often in our hallways here, demanding more money, telling us they're going to say mean things about us on social media unless we hand them more checks or we do things to regulate their competition. This is what this place has become. I'm terrified we've hit the point where on Twitter and X, someone saying something mean about me is now a policy override over a calculator. And here's one of the drivers of this, and one of the other things that's really uncomfortable to talk about. We have a shortage of people, young people in the country. It's a math problem. Look, we're only a couple ticks over zero population growth right now. There's a couple data sets out there, depending on what continues with immigration policy and a couple other things, sometime in the next 5 years, we may actually, as a country, go slightly negative. You go, oh, good. Remember, Medicare, Social Security are pay-as-you-go programs. I did the presentation a couple of weeks ago on the Social Security Actuary Report because I'm sure every member of Congress pulled it out, read it, highlighted it, noticed you got about 6 years and 3 months, and the trust funds are empty. And if we follow the law, now I think Social Security Actuary Report is wrong on one of their math, but we'll give them, they said in 6 years, 3 months, you get a 22% cut. I think it's 24%. But if you extend that out, that's doubling senior poverty in the following year. Yay, we're going to double the number of homeless living on the street of baby boomers. That's moral. But are we allowed to talk about it? Are we allowed to fix it? Are we allowed to do the really hard thing? And guess what, Mr. Speaker? At that same time, the Medicare trust fund is also empty. So from last year to 2032, Medicare doubles in spending, goes from $1 trillion to $2 trillion. And the Medicare Part A trust fund's gone. And so if you're a hospital, you take a 12% cut. That's the law. How many of you on Medicare are going to be able to see your doctor in that hospital? And so you start to take a look at this. In 2025, 0 to 18, we had 76 million, but 63 million over 65. In 9 years, we'll have 70 million. So we'll actually have fewer under 18. And we'll have 76 million, 65 and up. And I'm one of them. I'm 64. And yes, I'm 64 with a 4-year-old. So yes, I'm really optimistic about the future. I'm just cranky about the math. So, all right, let's continue on this. Workers per Social Security beneficiary, we got a problem. In 2011, we had 2.9. In 2025, so last year, we have 2.7, and it continues to do this. It's a little hard to do as a pay-as-you-go program. That's why every month when Social Security checks go out the door, the Social Security administrators reach over to their special Treasury bills and say, Treasury, we're short because payroll taxes don't cover all the checks going out the door. Give us some of our money back. And that goes on and on for about another 6 years and 3 months, and then they don't have any more to cash in. Seniors per 100 working age adults. 2011, we had 21.9 seniors per 100 people in the labor force. Last year, it's now 32. Do you see? I'm trying to pound this point in. We prefer it to be, it's horrible Democrat policy. And they say, oh, it's tax policy. But I've already shown you, percentage of the economy we take in taxes has stayed remarkably stable. It's the economy grows, so you may have a lower tax rate, but because the economy is bigger, you're still taking in the same percentage of the GDP. All right. U.S. population age 65 and up. 2011, we had 41 million. 2026, this is a projection for this year, we have 63 million. Estimated share of outlays by group. I know there's a lot of bars in this chart. The punchline here is actually very simple. In about 25, maybe 26 months, over half of the federal government's spending will go to those 65 and up. Now, why this is important, now remember, think of baby boomers, large demographic quartiles. When I was a kid in the 70s, for every dollar for seniors, there were $7 spent for those functionally under 18. That is almost reversed now. And it's not really about a change in policy, it's actually a change in demographic populations. But this is really important. So come over here. And national defense in 9 years will take 12% of our spending. Seniors over 65 will take 52% in 9 budget years. It's just math. We know it. Hell, we knew people were going to turn 65. We knew we had a baby boom 65 years ago. Actually, 70-some years ago. Why are we so terrified to go in front of our voters and tell the truth about math, tell them that often the crap that they see on this thing is fake? It's meant for, you to click, get a nice dopamine hit, but it's not budget policy. I had a woman the other day at an event, and a beautiful event, wonderful people. I think I was up in Prescott, and talking about this, and she was absolutely positive if we just cut this one little this benefit off, we could balance the budget. And we spent a couple moments. We walked on the internet using our phones, and she saw it was like $9 billion was the total value of the benefit over a year. So it did cover about a day and a quarter of borrowing, not spending, borrowing. And she was devastated. It was as if I said something horrible to her. Is that why politicians are terrified? Is that why we're terrified to actually tell the truth to our brothers and sisters? Remember, you have a country that's borrowing about $6 to $7 billion every day. I started to talk about Doge before. My economists, we'd help them. I'm a believer we have to have a revolution in how we provide government services, the adoption of technology, the elimination of excess positions, those things. But all it's passed so far is about $7 billion in actual spending cuts that have made it through Congress, made it through the Senate, made it to the president's desk for a signature. So functionally, it barely covers 1 day of borrowing. But how many of our folks back home get a text message every other week saying, are you ready for your Doge check? Just send us a couple $1,000 and we'll send you a Doge check. Those text messages are fraud. The point of this It's just demographics. And I'm one of them. I'm at the tail end, but I'm a baby boomer. And it basically means in 9 budget years, 21.4% of our society, of our population, will be 65 and up. We will have moved into our earned benefit years, our earned Medicare, our earned Social Security. If you had military retirement, if you had public service retirement, whatever it is. Then you take other calculations that I'm not going to geek out too much on, labor force participation, the number of our population that's actually in the labor force. We have a math problem. What's the moral obligation of those of us who are elected to actually know what, I can't curse on the floor, know what the hell we're talking about, know the math, stop trying to sell shiny objects and things that basically are enraging, but don't take down the republic. I will argue this debt, unless we find a way to start stabilizing it, we are not going to make it another 250 years. Is this miracle of a self-governing republic worth saving? Then it's worth telling our voters and the public the truth about our demographics, the cost of financing it, and how much trouble we're actually in. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will go back and look at all the angry comments I'm going to get, because once again, telling the truth means you get the crap kicked out of you around here. And I'm perfectly happy to do it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Kaptur, for 30 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise tonight to spotlight the urgent need for deepened cooperation between the United States and Ukraine in defense innovation. This follows yesterday's important announcement of $18,400,000 of investment through our Department of Defense in our Northwest Ohio region. After over 10 years of Russia's brutal, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, Ukraine has given the world a masterclass in the future of warfare. Ukraine has pioneered drone tactics and technology. It has developed cost-effective air defense systems, all under the most difficult of circumstances. Imagine Russia, a nation of 11 time zones. Ukraine has but one. Russia has 3.5 times as many people as Ukraine, but Ukraine fights on nobly. Ukraine's ecosystem of innovation is a model that the free world can't afford to ignore. No matter where I travel as a member of our Defense Subcommittee and meet with U.S. troops who are close or in theater, you know what they say to me? Congresswoman, please help us advance drone technology. I've heard many things from troops, but that has been one of their most constant clarion calls to members of Congress, and we intend to deliver to them. And that's why today I introduced the Bipartisan Strategic Unmanned Systems Partnership Act. I underline bipartisan, along with Representatives Fitzpatrick, Quigley, McCall, Costa, and Bacon. These are members with experience, both military and civilian. This companion legislation to its Senate counterpart, introduced by Senators Rosen and Rounds, would establish a landmark strategic defense innovation working group with Ukraine and NATO. This working group would accelerate joint production of innovative systems to defend our nations at a time when liberty needs it most and it's being challenged in many, many ways globally. Remember, Iran just killed American troops with the same weapons it tested with Russia. Iran and Russia have a relationship, and then they used the technologies against Ukraine. But it was Ukraine that came to our defense with its innovation in the Middle East. It was Ukraine. That is the mark of a true ally and friend under very difficult circumstances. Mr. Speaker, when I visit U.S. troops defending liberty, I ask them, what else can we do? They said, just get us better drones faster. And thus today I rise in celebration of the announcement of $18.4 million in F-drone manufacturing to be anchored in Ohio. Both Central Ohio, which has already received Andural's investment, and now in Northwestern Ohio, $18.4 million to begin to manufacture F-drones on our soil. An all-hands-on-deck local, state, and federal approach won the day for Northwestern Ohio. Our sustained engagement now has attracted one of the leading manufacturers of unmanned systems, Ukrainian defense drones, the U.S. arm of Ukraine's F-drones, to stand up assembly in Northwestern Ohio. It will complement an equally significant investment by Anduril in Central Ohio. Already, our state of Ohio is well recognized as the home of aviation, of space exploration, and defense industrial base manufacturing. We're the home of the best fighter wing in the United States of America, F-16s, and they're a guard unit, and we are so proud of them. This UDD drone firm will operate on the cutting edge of drone technology and defense innovation. Its systems have been battle-tested on the front lines of liberty, defending the free people of Ukraine from dictator Vladimir Putin's merciless and unprovoked invasion. UDD is now one of the leaders in the Pentagon's drone dominance program, ensuring that American troops can defend themselves with the best technology available. I've been honored to work with the innovative UDD team to spotlight the benefits of investing in Northwestern Ohio. Working closely alongside the Regional Growth Partnership and Jobs Ohio, and together with Governor Mike DeWine, together we achieved a strategic partnership with the potential to grow into a substantial and sustained presence across our Great Lakes region. We have it all: land, air, sea. Our region has a talented workforce, a proven manufacturing infrastructure, research and testing, phenomenal assets with our space agencies, as well as a community that honors and celebrates the shared benefits of working with our freedom-loving allies abroad. We are confident in our potential to be a global leader in U.S. drone manufacturing. And Northwestern Ohio's manufacturing genius has formed the backbone of the arsenal of democracy. We understand steel, we understand forging, we understand propulsion, we understand tooling, we make things, we form things. We helped defeat fascism in World War II, Soviet communism in the last century, and remain committed to liberty and to sustaining our NATO alliance against all enemies. Building our nation's defense also builds our middle class, and we keep them free. Our region stands ready to stay vigilant at creating a future to ensure jobs and industry leadership for Northwest Ohio's manufacturing workforce, and making sure that China and other countries like Iran do not have the most sophisticated technology that is known to the world. The urgent national security imperative of dominating the drone space and the economic benefits for our communities are why I'm honored to lead on these issues here on Capitol Hill. These include introducing today my bipartisan Strategic Unmanned Systems Partnership Act to ensure America continues working with our Ukrainian allies on these vital issues. Together, we will cement Northwestern Ohio as a critical drone manufacturing capital of America. And with Anduril's investment in Central Ohio, together we will meet our U.S. military's new needs at home and abroad. And Mr. Speaker, in helping to close today, as we return home for 4th of July commemorations, I rise especially to commemorate and celebrate our nation's 250th anniversary. We are still strong. We are still free. We have lots of work to do, but it was this week in 1776 that our founders, our framers, our forefathers and foremothers in Philadelphia came together to make the courageous declaration that we chose liberty over tyranny. How must have that felt at that time? A year before, Delegate Patrick Henry of Virginia, just a little south of where I'm standing, proclaimed, "Give me liberty or give me death." A year later, he became Virginia's popularly elected first governor. Imagine the courage and the vision. Our founders were farmers, printers, and merchants, hardworking, ordinary people who did the extraordinary and envisioned the extraordinary. They gave rise to the idea that freedom is a right, not a privilege granted by a king. For 250 years, that Declaration of Independence and choice of liberty has carried our nation through wars and expansive economic recessions, through innovation and growth, and through division and unity. It was stronger than the weakest among us. It is important that we don't just look back with pride. We must look to the future with purpose, to what the next 50, 100, and even 250 years of the American experiment might require of us. And first of all, it should require duty. Duty to country. Duty to country before self, because liberty is not free. It requires citizens who rise to duty for our republic. In this era, each citizen must make a vital decision to ensure our nation and people can flourish, not just today, but for the decades to come. That requires some wisdom, and we could do a little better at that. Let Americans be proud of our progress when celebrating the next milestone anniversary. So may God bless America and give us all the courage to fight for a good and prosperous and free people, a productive future for all the generations of Americans to come, and gratitude, gratitude, gratitude for where this 250 years has moved America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, for 30 minutes.
Thank the Speaker, and I appreciate the bipartisan nature of remarks tonight in remembrance of the importance of this week and Independence Day in our great nation's history, in this particular one, celebrating the 250th. And I'm going to first, though, focus a little bit on my home state of Texas. It was a year ago this week that we were in the throes of negotiating what was called at the time the Big Beautiful Bill, an important piece of legislation that I'm very honored to have been a part of working through. It was difficult, working through all the complexities of the tax policy, dealing with the complexities of the reforms to Medicaid, to welfare programs, saving $1.7 trillion, pulling back some of the subsidies and unreliable power that was so critically important. But all of that was going on, and my son Charlie, who's here with me now, we were here, we were in the throes of the debates. We were at the White House on the 2nd, debating it. We're here on the 3rd, late night. We vote on this thing. And then I was supposed to be in Kerrville, Texas, which is where I go every summer for the 4th of July. There's a big concert down on the river. And I was supposed to be there where my family's gone for now at least over a decade. And I talked to the president about being here for the bill signing because of all the work we'd gone through, and ultimately told the president I would stay here for the bill signing. So I stick around, visited with some friends on the night of the 3rd. I'm watching the weather forecast, and I wake up on the morning of the 4th. My son and I were getting ready to go see some friends, and I see the news reports, and all of a sudden it starts to sink in what had happened in Kerrville. And we've had a number of moments here on the floor of the House, one in particular almost a year ago, in which we remembered those lives that were lost and what occurred there in Kerrville. But now, a year since this coming Saturday on the 4th, I do think it merits reflecting on what occurred, and importantly, what occurred after. That area of the Guadalupe River is surrounded by, high cliffs in certain areas. It's a very beautiful part of the state. It cuts through the limestone. And so we've been in drought conditions. You've got hard ground, limestone. A massive amount of water pours into that area. And it's an area that was inhabited by thousands of people celebrating, obviously, July 4th, but summer camps. That's what a lot of people came to focus on. And remember that we lost 27 little girls from Camp Mystic. And fortunately, we didn't lose any from any of the other camps, but we lost over 100 other people. And a lot of people forget that part. People who are camping with their families, whole families that were swept down the river. And there's been a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking since then, people saying what could have been done, what should have been done. The force of the floodwaters, all that occurred, all that happened, and ripping up 100-year-old cypress trees. But I just want to focus in on what I believe is the true story of what occurred after. And that is the faith of the community of Kerrville, who came together to figure out how to rebuild through the great charity of people across not just the county or the state, but the entire country and the world. We raised over $150 million in private contributions, of which over half, pushing 180 to 100, have been pushed out the door. The rest of it should be out the door by the end of this year to help small businesses, to help keep people afloat, mental health, keeping people in houses, in apartments, giving people the ability to stay on their feet, and all done through the power of the strong faith of the people of Texas. And in the town of Kerrville, there's a giant cross that sits up on the hill. And there's an entire garden there dedicated to the gospel of Christ and the extent to which Christian faith was driving the people of Texas and Central Texas and the Hill Country to help their brothers and sisters and help families cannot be overstated. And I got to tell you, as a member of Congress, I don't tend to do a lot of the requests for funding. I don't come up here and try to file bills when there's disasters in my home state of Texas. My view is we're the 8th biggest economy in the world. We have 31 million people, and the federal government is not an ATM for every ill that befalls the people. And I'm proud of the people of Texas stepping up. Yes, FEMA was there. Yes, the federal government was a part of the effort in dealing and managing with the aftermath, getting assets there, Coast Guard heroism. But there were a lot of volunteers too, colleagues, friends of mine, Morgan Luttrell, others that were literally in the water looking in search and rescue. The number of people that volunteered, I came in on the night of the 4th and I went to the facility where they were gathering, and all of the experts and all the people that were there and all the volunteers and the sheriff and all the local law enforcement. And this one young man was just sitting in the parking lot, and he'd just driven down from Lubbock, 5 odd hours, and just come down on a whim as a volunteer with a bunch of drones so he could help. And I kept running into people from all over who had just driven there, the Cajun Navy that came over, all of the people that stepped up to help. I want to appreciate or express my gratitude and thanks to so many different people, local volunteers, the people that helped out, but all the way up to the President of the United States himself, Susie Wiles herself, former Secretary Noem, Governor Abbott, the head of the Texas Department of Emergency Management, Chief Nim Kidd, the Kerr County Sheriff, Sheriff Latha, countless local leaders. More than 850 people were rescued from the floodwaters during those critical days, notably the Coast Guard, which President Trump had acknowledged at some point here, the $150 million of charitable contributions, all of the things that occurred. It's such a great place, Central Texas. There's a reason people from all over the country. My colleague Buddy Carter had one of his family members, even though he's a congressman from Georgia, who was impacted by the floods. Friends of mine and colleagues from other parts on the other side of the aisle that were reaching out to me because they had people that were affected by the floods. But at the end of the day, it is that cross sitting above Kerrville. It is the cross that reminds us that even in our darkest moments as humanity, hope remains. The suffering is not the final word. The love of Christ was on display there. The love of Christ is constantly in display there in the Hill Country and reflected in the actions and the compassion shown by Texans and Americans around the world. So I want to remember those people. I want to remember the lives lost. I want to remember the heroes. And I want to remember the people that were there at the moment. Because with all due respect to a lot of politicians, particularly in Austin, Texas, particularly some of the statewide elected office holders in the state of Texas, and you know who you are. You sit around pontificating and pointing fingers at people about what they should or should not have done from the comfort of your office and your perch in Austin, Texas, when good people lost their lives trying to help little girls that lost their lives. Dick Eastland, who was swept away in the flood, and his family and the people that are maligning their family for what the camp should or should not have done. The fact of the matter is they were there at 4 o'clock in the morning. They were there trying to figure out how to manage one of the most devastating floods that we've ever seen. So politicians who want a Monday morning quarterback and want to try to point fingers, you're not helping. The people that had faith in the Lord Almighty, the people who stepped up to help each other in the time of tragedy that we had last year, they're the ones that I want to lift up and thank. Because it's not about finger pointing. It's about standing alongside our brothers and sisters when bad things happen. Because bad things have always happened, and bad things will happen again. But it is how we respond to them. It is what we do in the wake of them. It is our faith in the Lord Almighty and our faith in Jesus Christ that is what perseveres, not political self-interest and self-motivation. I also want to note here as I think about what happened there and the greatness of Kerrville and the greatness of the Hill Country and the greatness of the state of Texas and the whole world in response to that, from my perspective. I think about all of the things that day represents, July 4th. And now so many of us are going to remember July 4th there in Kerrville for that event. But I'm going to be back in Kerrville this 4th of July. I'm not staying here in D.C. for the great celebration here. I've been to a bunch of them in this town. But I'm going to go back to Kerrville because I want to be with the people that I represent. And I'm proud to represent them as the congressman for the 21st Congressional District. But the 4th of July, what I prefer to call Independence Day, is, for me, such a special reflection of who we are as a people, as a sovereign nation. I was blessed during the window of COVID to road trip with 3 of my staffers to Philadelphia on July 2nd, 2020. Now, people will recall that at the time, so much of our nation was shut down. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. And at the time, there was a lot of turmoil, rioting in the streets, burning down the businesses, statues being thrown in the water, statues being defaced. And I wasn't going to have any of it. I wanted to exalt the greatness of our country. So I grabbed my staff. I said, you guys want to go on a road trip on the Great American Statue road trip? And so we drove to Philadelphia. And we went straight to Independence Hall. And I recorded video outside of Independence Hall talking about how it wasn't the bricks, it wasn't the building, it wasn't the Liberty Bell sitting out there in front of Independence Hall. None of that. You could graffiti it, paint it, you could destroy it, you could throw it in a river or a harbor. It was what was done in that building. And I went over to the National Park Service and I said, hi. I said, I assume the building's not open because it wasn't because of COVID. And they said, no. And God bless them, as a member of Congress, they let me go in with my 3 staffers. So there we were on July 2nd, which any student of history will know why that matters. Because it was in fact on July 2nd, not July 4th, that we voted, that our founders voted. And that was the vote that mattered. The words of the Declaration of Independence are awesome. I say as a University of Virginia graduate and proud believer in all of those principles articulated by Thomas Jefferson and the other people who had a hand in that drafting. But it was the vote. It was the willingness to vote and say, we're leaving. We're breaking away from the crown. And those last words in the Declaration of Independence, pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, we talk about those words, but they lived them. They sat there in Independence Hall and they looked at each other in the eye and they voted to do it. And again, at that time in that summer, when statues were being torn down and stuff being thrown in the water, my point, and I went up there and recorded a video, was you can undo all of that, but you don't undo the courage of those who came before us to fight to give us this great republic and this great nation in which our freedoms can be enjoyed by us and by our progeny. And so I recorded a video at Independence Hall. We stayed there, we visited, we got to be there again in Independence Hall on July 2nd. I don't know if I'll ever do that again, but certainly not in a building that was pretty much empty, except for me and 3 staffers. And then we left and we went down to Fort McHenry, and where we were regaling the words of the Star-Spangled Banner and Francis Scott Key coming back down through Baltimore. And you think about what that meant. And I could sit here and give an entire speech on the words of the Star-Spangled Banner. When people say they want to diminish the Star-Spangled Banner, that it's more difficult to sing or it doesn't soar as America the Beautiful or something, I disagree wholeheartedly. The words echoing when you were at a stadium and when you listen to the words and you see what it means, that flag was in fact still there. It's so important that we remember that and remember why that is our national anthem. And then driving back down to D.C. and going to various monuments around here in Washington. And we went down to the Jefferson Memorial and the Lincoln Memorial. We went down to the Roosevelt Memorial. And we continued to do that to honor the greatness of this country, even as some were trying to tear it down. And I say all of that to say that our sovereignty as a nation matters. It's not something that you can just sort of trivially dismiss. And I'm going to make a quick political commentary here and then come back to our celebration of the 250th. I've got about 15 minutes left. And I want to talk about the Supreme Court ruling today because it matters a great deal. Today, the United States Supreme Court issued an opinion that I believe was profoundly misguided and undermines our national security and our sovereignty as a nation in a profoundly damaging way. And I've got friends and people who've debated this issue for years, good friends on both sides of the aisle. And this issue, when I say I mean the issue, is the issue of so-called birthright citizenship. Are you an American citizen for simply and solely being born on American soil? And I remember thinking a long time ago that there was something kind of magical about that concept. That if you're here and you're in America and you're born here, you're an American. But it became clearer and clearer to me as that privilege, it's not a right. I want to come back to that in terms of what the 14th Amendment says. What that privilege means to be an American. And that it was being abused. It was being abused by people for profit and being abused by people for some sort of monetary benefit or a benefit of some social welfare or a benefit of going to a hospital or going to school. All things which I understand as a parent seeking. But we've turned on its head everything that is good and great about our nation. And this opinion today by the United States Supreme Court saying that the 14th Amendment, which was very clearly ratified to deal with the issue of slavery in a post-slavery world, to whom do these former slaves now owe allegiance? And to factor that into determining how you define our character as we're adopting the 14th Amendment it was very clear that subject to the jurisdiction thereof was meant to deal with that. And for 5 Supreme Court justices today to manufacture in whole cloth that the 14th Amendment ratified in the 1860s, in 1868, that somehow conferred upon someone citizenship because a parent came to the United States and birthed the child on American soil, despite not being a citizen and despite not having any allegiance to the United States, is not just appalling, but it begs who we are as a nation. The Chief Justice, no doubt, and Justice Barrett and the other 3 justices that joined that opinion, no doubt believe they were doing some sort of great service by trying to establish that this means some great thing for the United States. I would argue that what they're doing is destroying the United States, because you no longer have a sovereign nation. If you're telling the world that all you have to do is flout our laws, break our laws, come to our country and have a child, and that child gets to have citizenship, which has things conferred upon it, voting and other privileges and access to welfare benefits, then all of those who bled and died for this great nation, to just hand that over in violation of the entire text, spirit, letter of the Constitution of the 14th Amendment is detrimental to our Republican form of government. Roberts emphasizing, quote, children born of parents unlawfully or temporarily present in the United States satisfy both elements of the citizenship clause under the Constitution. He concluded they are citizens at birth. That is false. The Supreme Court majority ruled that illegal aliens invading our country having U.S.-born children is somehow legally sound, even though the justice in Wong Kim Ark rejected that notion. This is something that has been debated for a long time, but when we think about this, an estimated 124,000 to 300,000 anchor babies, which are children born to illegal aliens, are born each year. In 2023, up to 250,000 children were born to illegal aliens, which accounted for 7% of total births. I cannot imagine that if you told those men that were sitting in the foxholes in Bastogne and they were storming the beaches in Normandy to scale the cliffs, have bullets firing at them, that they would say, yeah, sure, let's turn over the country and our sovereignty as a nation to anyone who comes onto our soil and just tries to claim it. And it's being abused by our adversaries to undermine our national security. The fact is, the United States Congress cannot just sit idly by and allow the Supreme Court to do this. People say, well, Chip, separation of powers. The Supreme Court's going to get the final word on what the law is. Well, I would tell you that the Supreme Court has clearly made significant errors in judgment in the past. No one need look too far to figure out what that is. Plessy. There's been other opinions. Roe versus Wade, which the court has now rightly gone a different direction. But I would argue that the Congress needs to react swiftly and make very clear that we define what subject to the jurisdiction thereof means. That Congress should act swiftly to say we're not going to fund this false notion of who citizens are. And thirdly, that we're going to just pause immigration. If the Supreme Court of the United States, in its infinite wisdom, says that they get to decide as the final arbiter who is or is not a citizen, then why should Congress allow people to come into the United States to abuse it, to have children, to take advantage of a citizenship that is not actually allowed under the Constitution because the Supreme Court got it wrong? If the Supreme Court were to order or interpret the law that the President of the United States or the Speaker of the House or the Majority Leader of the Senate needs to appear before them unclothed to report to the Supreme Court, should those leaders of the other branches comply? Well, Chip, that's absurd. Okay, well, if the Supreme Court issues a ruling that is patently and facially unconstitutional, must the other branches follow it? I say no. I say no. Well, Chip, that's a controversial opinion. I don't think so. The Constitution of the United States does not stand for the proposition that the court ruled today. It simply does not. I think even an basic reading of the Constitution would make that clear. Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, both excoriating the majority opinion, made sure that it's very clear how wrong their opinion was. But to make that determination begs the question of what this body, Article 1, must do. Not can do, must do. This is the people's house. I can tell you that the people that I represent have no interest in continuing to pay taxes to fund people who are coming to the United States to take advantage of our country for profit or for any other motive. They have no interest in doing that. So why should we continue to fund a government that would do that? Look, I can tell you right now that for the decisions I have remaining in my time in Congress in this term, for the remaining of our funding decisions and appropriations, for whatever we're going to do in reconciliation, we better fix this. This Congress better fix this. Because I have no interest in continuing to fund the operations of a government that has been undermined by the United States Supreme Court. We should pause all immigration immediately. And by the way, Chip says, whoa, they said, Chip, you can't get that through the Senate. We have 60 votes. Well, let's keep having that fight too, because the Save America Act is not the actual full nature of the fight. The issue here is whether there is in any way, shape, or form a 60-vote threshold that we have to follow. There is not. The Senate as a body is yes to be a cooling saucer. Yes, as a conservative, I like there to be barriers to quick action for legislation. But under no circumstances does the Constitution or anything else contemplate 60 votes besides rules arbitrarily set by members of the Senate. And here we are at a time where this body, Congress, the House and the Senate together, need to act to protect our nation's sovereignty by allowing only American citizens to vote in American elections, to require voter identification in elections of our federal officials, to, yes, make very clear that subject to the jurisdiction thereof means what it means, and no, we're not going to import people into the United States as long as we're being told, absolutely, you must grant citizenship for any child born here. We have a choice, and we need to make it. We can pass the laws necessary to address what the court did. We can also codify what the president has been doing to secure our border, to stop the abuse of the American people that was happening under Biden and Mayorkas, by codifying, as we did under H.R. 2 in the last Congress, by codifying that work. Stop the abuse of asylum, stop the abuse of parole, stop the abuse of catch and release policies and all the policies that were being abused to undermine our country, which, by the way, is also tied to the birthright citizenship issue. You cannot have laws that are being openly exploited by certain Americans in conjunction with NGOs and outside groups and people who want to exploit us, including our enemies, to put people into the United States, have the court just declare that they can be citizens because they decided so, have taxpayer dollars providing benefits to people who have no allegiance to this country, who come here and fly other flags, who come here and say we should change our country. That cannot be how a sovereign nation exists. We are here this week in this town, and we're going to have a great celebration, and we should. This country has meant more than any other country on the face of the earth in history to provide a better way of life, prosperity, freedom, the ability to carry out your faith. This country has led the world. But here we are, and this country hangs in the balance. For 250 years, we have been that beacon of hope. God bless all of the people who want to come to our country. I'm glad they do. And I want to be able to invite and have people come to our country. But when our country has been badly exploited for decades, when there are people here right now who want to destroy the United States, who want it to become an Islamic state, who want to milk our welfare benefits, commit fraud against the country, who don't want to raise the American flag but the flag of another country, I do not understand for the life of me why we do not continue to do what we're doing by this president and remove people, but why this Congress will not act right now, immediately, to respond to the Supreme Court. I pray there's no criticism of leadership. I understand why we're leaving. It's July 4th. I want to go to Kerrville. I get it. But right now, I'd rather be here. I'd rather be here every day from now until we actually solve the problem. But if we do not defend this country, if we do not make sure that we can have laws that we can depend upon and a Constitution that we can rally around and believe in it, then what do we have left? The other thing that's getting lost in the shuffle for this celebration, and I do want to close with this, is, and I've talked about it before, is not just the 250th birthday of the United States, but the 200th anniversary this Saturday of the passing of both Thomas Jefferson and John Adams on the same day. And I bring that up for a reason in closing. We have a duty to protect that which I believe was divinely inspired by the Lord Almighty. We put In God We Trust up there for a reason. We have Moses overlooking the chamber for a reason. You cannot tell me that Jefferson and Adams, both so central to both the drafting of the Declaration of Independence and its adoption by the Continental Congress on July 2nd by vote, July 4th by drafting in 1776, to then pass both 50 years to the day on July 4th, 2026, with Adams passing saying Jefferson lives, only to find out, in truth, Jefferson had passed. Two men who squabbled, two men that fought, two men that had different views in terms of federalism, but who came together in mutual respect for what they had accomplished, and 50 years later pass on the same day. You cannot tell me that this nation was not divinely inspired and divinely created. And as we sit here at our 250th birthday and that 200th anniversary of the passing of those two great men, my ask of all Americans and the leadership of this great nation is that we put it all on the line to save that which was, in fact, divinely given to us. God gave this to us and to the world. The people of the world who want to come here will not have a nation to come to if it's no longer a nation. We have a duty to protect it. It is, in fact, compassionate to protect this nation for everyone in the world. That's our calling for our next 250 years. That's why we're here. It's why I wish we were all here right now in full-throated debate, just as they were in the Continental Congress, at each other's throats until they finally got unanimity to adopt the Declaration and take that vote and to pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. on Thursday, July 2nd, 2026.